We want to learn something about reliability. An event takes place and someone sees it happen. He's an eyewitness. So there are two possibilities. The person tells about it to another person, or he writes it down. If he writes it down, then what he has written is referred to as primary source, written by an eyewitness. Okay? Now this person who has not seen but has heard from an eyewitness may himself tell someone or put it in writing. What he has written will be referred to as a secondary source, because he has obtained it from someone who's obtained it from an eyewitness. He himself may tell someone or put it down in writing. This is a tertiary source. You can go on. Usually, this is not a very reliable source. Okay? In a court of law, primary sources are accepted. Even a secondary source, not accepted. That is hearsay. It's not evidence. Okay? Tertiary and beyond are never considered. All the Roman writers that we looked at, none of them were even tertiary sources. Okay? They got their information from someone, who got it from someone, who got it from someone, who got it from someone. Okay? Or information which they extracted by torturing their victims. They had no direct information. Okay? Not reliable. Okay? This is oral tradition that's written this thing. Oral tradition is very unreliable. We'll do a small exercise. I like to do this exercise. Come. Come. I'm going to tell you something. Okay? And I want you to go and tell uncle the same thing. Okay, brother? What will you do? You will go and tell the person behind you. You will tell the person behind. And so on. And Saru, you can come and tell me what you heard. Okay? So I don't want you to hear what I'm telling him. Let me switch it off.
I have to say, go fix 6 look dead.
Would you like to tell what I told you? I hope you got it right.
The 6 shakes, 6 sheep's dead.
Well, you got 2 words right. There was a 6 somewhere. Thank you. And there was death involved somewhere. But the rest of it, see, that's what happens with oral tradition. Okay? So that's why it is so unreliable. You tell someone, it gets distorted. So each step of the way, there's some distortion. By the time it goes this far, it has become so different. Okay? So what the Roman historians got was what had been floating around in Roman society. That's what they put down in writing. Totally unreliable. Okay? Do we have anything better than what the Romans have written? So all these witnesses, they are therefore unreliable. Do we have anything better? Let's take a look. We'll close in on that. This is the tomb of John the Apostle. Okay? This is what he writes in a letter that he had written. That which was from the beginning, which we have heard, which we have seen with our eyes, which we have looked at, and our hands have touched. This we proclaim concerning the word of life. The life appeared. We have seen it and testified to it. We proclaim to you the eternal life, which was with the Father and has appeared to us. We proclaim to you what we have seen and heard. He's writing about Jesus. And I don't want you to miss the important aspect of what he is saying. Okay? He's not writing a letter merely instructing people to live better lives. No, there is more to it than that. He sees himself as a witness with a very important task to testify. And he declares what sort of a witness he is. He says, I've seen with my eyes. I've heard with my ears. My hands have touched. So, what kind? Primary, secondary, tertiary? His writings, what are they? They are primary source. Okay? He saw it. He heard with his own ears. And his own hands handled. And he put down. So when we are talking about the New Testament, the Gospels, the historical book of Acts, and the different letters which were written, we are not talking philosophy here. We're talking about people who saw something, heard something, and were so gripped by what they saw and wrote. Their lives were changed. They couldn't keep it to themselves. They wanted others to be partakers of it. They wrote about it. Okay? Well, this is where we have the tomb of another apostle, Peter. This is what Peter writes. We did not follow cleverly invented stories. Some of the translations put it this way. We did not follow myths. We didn't follow cleverly invented stories when we told you about the power and coming of our Lord Jesus Christ. But we were eyewitnesses of his majesty. For he received honor and glory from God the Father when the voice came to him from the majestic glory saying, this is my son, whom I love. With him I am well pleased. Hey, you ignore all those other things. No. It's a copy-paste error. We ourselves heard this voice that came from heaven when we were with him on the sacred mountain. What kind of a source? Primary source. We were eyewitnesses. What we are declaring to you is not hearsay. It's not a gossip. It's not a rumor. But we were there. We saw it. Okay? So this is Gospel according to Luke chapter 1, verses 1 to 4. Many have undertaken to draw up an account of the things that have been fulfilled among us, just as they were handed down to us by those who from the first were eyewitnesses and servants of the word. Therefore, since I myself have carefully investigated everything from the beginning, it seemed good also to me to write an orderly account for you, most excellent Theophilus, so that you may know the certainty of the things that you have been taught. Okay? This is Luke writing. And was Luke a primary source or a secondary source? Secondary source. He was not an eyewitness. Okay? He says these things were handed down to us by those who from the first were eyewitnesses. See, one very important thing you have to understand about the New Testament is they were very careful. They didn't gloss over things. Okay? Luke is very careful to let his readers know he was not there. But he's got it from reliable eyewitnesses. Okay? They don't pretend to be more than what they are. They're very honest about what they write. So, when Luke wrote the sequel to his gospel, Acts, from reading you can know when Luke was there when the events were taking place and when he was not there. he changes from we to they. Then back to we when he joins the group. And then they when he is no longer with them. Very careful to use the right words. They didn't exaggerate or stretch facts. Then the nature of what they wrote. How did Luke write? Long, long ago, in a land far, far away. No, that's not how he wrote. In those days, Caesar Augustus issued a decree. He's talking about a particular individual. He names him. It's when Caesar Augustus was the king. He issued a decree that a census should be taken of the entire Roman world. He refers to an incident that takes place. So he's writing about someone. He's writing about some events that have taken place. He puts them on a timeline, so you know when they took place. Then he names places, so you know where they took place. So it's not just something like that. This was the first census that took place when Quirinius was governor of Syria. It's very careful to report that. And then he talks about a practice. Everyone went to his own town to register. Now that's not what you do during a census. When we have a census in our country, the census officer comes home. But he makes note that everyone went to his own town to register. This was, okay, so a little bit of a background to this we get from the writings of the Roman historians. Roman historians write that Caesar Augustus was very keen on expanding his empire. Okay? Expansion requires big armies. Big armies mean big expenses. Big expenses mean you need to have a lot of money in the treasury. Okay? So, Caesar Augustus was on a recruiting. Caesar declared everyone who is a part of the Roman Empire, no matter who he is, what community he belongs to, he can become a Roman soldier. He promised them handsome salaries. And then, now he needs money. So he has to tax people. To tax people, he has to know who is there and how much he has. Hence the census. Okay? So this was the first census. There had been no census before this in Rome. The first time a census is being conducted so that he has an idea of how much money there is and how much he can extract from everyone. So he not only recruited soldiers, he also recruited large numbers of tax collectors. Okay? So then everyone went to his own town to register. In the 15th year of the reign of Tiberius Caesar, okay, this is now another Caesar. Luke is very specific very careful to note that the Roman emperor is now a different person. When Pontius Pilate was governor of Judea, Herod Tetrarch of Galilee. Okay, so this Herod's father was the Herod who had ordered the massacre of all the children. So after his death, Rome found no son of his competent to take the place of Herod the Great. That was the one who had ordered the massacre. Okay, so they divided the empire into four parts. They divided Israel into four parts. Israel, Judea, those parts into four parts. Each was ruled by a tetrarch. There were four of them that ruled together what? their father had ruled as a monarch. Okay, so Herod, tetrarch of Galilee, his brother Philip, tetrarch of Iturea and Trachonitis, Lysanias, tetrarch of Abilene, during the high priesthood of Annas and Caiaphas, the word of God came to John. Okay, so he's very careful to place what is happening on a time frame, so you know when this took place. Then he's referring to a person, Tiberius Caesar. That's Tiberius Caesar. You can go to a museum and see what he looks like. Then there is Pontius Pilate. Okay, we don't know what Pilate looks like, but we do have historical evidence for Pontius Pilate. There's a stone that bears his name. The stone is a dedication stone. All right. There is a temple dedicated to Tiberius and built by Pontius Pilate. And this is a dedication stone. He dedicates the temple to the emperor. Okay. So we know there was a Pontius Pilate. Then the places referred to in his narrative, we know what they were like. They did not change much in the centuries that followed. Okay, Bethlehem today looks different. This is Bethlehem 150 years back. In almost 1850 years, Bethlehem hadn't changed. But of course, now modernization, Bethlehem today is different. This is a photograph taken just 150 years back and almost the same as it was when Jesus was born here. This is Nazareth. Nazareth has changed quite a bit. This is a reconstructed home from the ruins of a first century home. That's modern Nazareth at the back. Okay, this is a reconstructed home. This is what homes look like when Jesus was a boy running around the streets of Nazareth. This is what homes look like. In fact, some archaeologists think this was his house. This is where he grew up. Okay, we don't know that for sure. Why do they believe that to be his house? It had to be a really important house for people who were there to take such good care of it, while other houses disappeared. So they believe this is the actual house where he grew up. Some things in this picture are new, like the buildings in the background. But what's in the foreground is ancient. It's called Mary's Well. Okay? And not without reason. This was the only well in Bethlehem at one time. And everyone came there to draw water. And this is where Mary would have come. Okay? This is an ossuary. An ossuary is a box made of stone. If the person was rich, it would be fine marble. If he was not a very wealthy person, it would be something simple, like this one. Okay. This is the ossuary of James, the brother of Jesus. You remember we talked about him a little while ago? He had been stoned to death. Okay. So, in Israel, they buried people. But since there was a strong belief in physical resurrection when the Messiah comes, so they allowed the flesh to decay, the bones were collected and placed in a box. Okay, these boxes would be about a cubit long, sometimes longer, and about a foot high and wide. Small boxes of alabaster or marble. So this is the ossuary of James, the brother of Jesus. That's what is written on it. Okay? So much so that a lot of historians called it a fraud. But today, very careful examination by forensic scientists have revealed that in the grooves is a patina. You know, marble that's exposed to the air reacts chemically and it forms a layer. The thickness of the layer will tell you for how long the patina has been forming. Okay? The thickness of the layer that is formed in the grooves takes you back to the 1st century. So they know this is not a hoax. It was not something done by someone a few hundred years back. No, this is from the 1st century. This is the synagogue at Capernaum. I'm just showing a few things. Okay, so there's a lot more to Israel. This is the ossuary of Caiaphas. Remember him? He was the high priest at that time. And compared with the ossuary of James, well, this was one rich man. Okay, so he's got a nice bone box to himself. He also lived in a fine house. These are the steps of his house, still there. They would have dragged Jesus up these steps to go to his house. These are the ruins of his house. But there is more to his house than what you see in the picture. Whatever is above the ground has fallen. But there's something underground. Because his house had a very elaborate basement. Inside were dungeons. And this would have been the dungeon where Jesus would have been housed for the night. Okay? He'd been arrested in the evening. No, in Bombay, with our nightlife, in our mind's eye, the events in Gethsemane, the arrest of Jesus, we imagine it like, 12:30, 1, 2 in the morning. No. They didn't have a day that stretched so long. By sunset, everyone was either back home or almost home. They prayed, they ate and slept off. Finished. By 7:38, everyone was in bed. So the arrest would have been made that time. There were 6 trials between now and morning, but there were also huge time gaps in between. And this is where he would have been kept. This is the hole in the ceiling. No one escaped the high priest. This is how you get in, and this is how you get out. So the prisoner, there's a rope tied and he is lowered in. And then the rope is pulled out. He stays and he can't come out. And then you let the rope down and ask him to put his hands in, and then you haul him out again when you want him out. Okay? So no way a prisoner can escape. So this is that. Okay? This is Gabbatha that we read about in the New Testament. The stone pavement where he stood accused, where he was flogged. And this is called the Exe Homo Arch. Exe Homo, behold the man. This is where Pilate stood and showed him to the people. It's just a man. We spat on him, flogged him. Look at him. He's just a man. You really want him crucified? Okay, this is where it happened. This is a picture from about 150 years back. Today, it looks different. Buildings have come up. This is that arch, part of it. So, 150 years back, you could see 3 arches, but now there are buildings that have come up. So, only a small part of the arch is visible. Okay? And it's there on a very famous street in Jerusalem. Because from there down the street, this is called the Way of Sorrows, Via Dolorosa. This is where they had him carry the cross. They rammed nails through his hands and feet. For centuries, historians said no such practice existed in Rome. Romans didn't crucify. They were a highly civilized people. They were, but they were also brutal. They didn't invent crucifixion. It was invented by Persians and maybe the Assyrians before them. The Romans used it whenever they wanted to execute someone that they wanted to make an example of. So today, we have the heel bone of a man who died of crucifixion. Okay? There's that nail, it's 15 inches long. Okay? You'll notice it doesn't look anything like the pictures of crucifixion that we normally see. This is probably how this man, his name is Johanan, was crucified. They also usually crucified them naked. Okay? That's the ossuary where his bones are, and where they found the heel bone with the nail through it. Okay? The rest of the cross on which you'll notice the pieces of wood. This is to prevent the hand coming off. Okay? So they were very careful. They were experts at doing what they did. And this stunning object, I didn't know it existed. For me, TV time is meal time. So I was eating and half listening to what was going on TV. I was watching History Channel, and I was thinking, suddenly my ears got, this is the board that was nailed to the cross above Jesus. I said, hey, then I listened very carefully. This is referred to as the Tigulus Crucis. Okay? And this is what it would have looked like. A rough wooden board on which were written these. And they would apply gypsum and in red or black so that it can be seen. Then there would be normally a rope, and it would be hung around the neck of the man who was being led to be executed, so that all can see what his crime was. And then it would be nailed above the cross. This one says, first line in Hebrew, Jesus of Nazareth, King of the Jews, in full. In Latin, it simply says King of the Jews. In Greek, it simply says King of the Jews. Okay? Is it genuine? So I was listening to them. Hey, I didn't know this existed. None of the books that we read even mentioned this. Something so important. How could they not mention it? So there was a discussion, and the consensus was, it's genuine. There's a good reason for it. So the scholars said, all three lines have been written by a Jew. How do they know that? Because the Jews wrote right to left. Jesus of Nazareth, it actually goes like this. Jesus of Nazareth, King of the Jews. But Latin and Greek are written left to right. But here it is written right to left. The Jew didn't know this is how you write Latin. He had written it ulta. The way Hebrew is written, he has written his. Okay? So, the very board. This is not the Titulus Crucis. This is a copy of it. Okay? So, the Titulus Crucis is, I think we'll need to go back to the previous slide. That's where it is there within that frame. Okay? A careful study of it shows that this is what it looked like. Okay? This is what is written on it. Okay? Then comes something else. This is called the Nazareth inscription. The king is Nero. And Nero in AD 44. So when did Jesus die? Approx AD 33, right? AD 44, he has the stone inscription put in Nazareth. Okay? And this is what the inscription says. If anyone knows who has been removing bodies from their tombs, whatever the reason, let it be known that Rome views this as a serious crime. And if anyone is caught, what will happen to him? He will be executed. He will be executed. Okay? Why did this have to be done in Nazareth of all the places? Because there was one famous Nazarene who was missing from his tomb. Okay? So a lot of evidence here that this was put up by Rome when all their investigation failed to find a plausible explanation for an empty tomb. Okay? So, this is the rendering. It's my decision. Okay, this is what Nero says, Edict of Caesar. Graves and tombs, whoever has made them for the religious observance of parents or children or household members, that these remains undisturbed forever. But if anyone legally charges that another person has destroyed or has in any manner extracted those who have been buried, or has moved with wicked intent those who have been buried to other places, committing a crime against them, or has moved sepulchre sealing stones against such a person, I order that a judicial tribunal be created, just as is done concerning the gods in human religious observances. Even more so will it be obligatory to treat with honor those who have been entombed. You are absolutely not to allow anyone to move those who have been entombed. But if someone does, I wish that violator to suffer capital punishment under the title of tomb breaker. Title? Because whenever they had that is why Titulus Crucis, title on the cross, the crime is always mentioned. Okay? So, this will be the title on the person who commits the crime. Okay? So, historians believe from this that the tomb of Jesus was indeed empty. Okay? Well,